whole restaurant went dead silent, like someone had squeezed the air out of the room. And then the laughter came from his own wife, sharp and bright, slicing straight through his dignity like a blade. Nick and Sam's that night glowed under warm golden lights, the scent of grilled steak mixing with champagne and the clinking glasses of Dallas high society. Ryan Caldwell's birthday table sat in the best spot, right in the center of the VIP room. But the strange thing was, the man about to turn 49 sat very still, almost fading into the background of the very party meant for him. Vanessa Caldwell stood up. Her fitted black dress made her look like the queen of a new dynasty. She lifted a champagne flute, tapped it lightly, and let her gaze sweep across nearly 40 guests, familiar faces from the law firm, partners, sponsors, and the circle from the Highland Park Golf Club. Then Vanessa smiled, not exactly cruel, but deliberate, calculated. I think everyone knows, in this marriage, who the real success story is. A ripple of laughter spread, awkward at first, hesitant, then thicker as she continued. My husband still drives that old beat-up sedan while I just became partner. For 20 years he has lived far too safely. I have to be honest, Ryan is the perfect example of a man who likes to stay behind and bask in his wife's spotlight. That last line made a few people laugh out loud. A man sitting nearby nudged his colleague and smirked in amusement. Across the room, Sophie, their daughter, giggled, while her finger kept scrolling on her phone, as if her father being humiliated was just entertainment content. Ryan did not react. He did not blush. He did not frown. He did not press his lips together. He simply smiled. Vanessa watched him, wanting to see him crumble, wanting to see him fight back because fighting back meant weakness, and weakness was easier to step on. But Ryan stayed silent because no one in that room knew the truth. No one knew the lake house Vanessa loved to show off as her symbol of achievement had actually been bought with profits from one of Ryan's quiet investments. No one knew Sophie's Duke tuition was not a scholarship the way Vanessa claimed, but money from the Caldwell Family Trust. And no one knew that the man they called the one standing behind was, in fact, holding financial power strong enough to make Vanessa's glittering life collapse in a single day. Ryan looked around at the laughing faces, the contemptuous eyes, the nods of approval toward Vanessa. Something inside him shifted, quietly, but forever. He placed his napkin beside the uncut cake, stood up, and walked out of the restaurant without saying a word. But in that exact moment, a new story began, a story they would pay to understand, because the silent man is sometimes the most dangerous one. That night, Ryan Caldwell did not go home. And the moment he turned off his phone, Vanessa's whole world began to tremble like a glass tower hit by an earthquake. The old sedan surged through Dallas streets flooded with lights, leaving behind laughter, champagne, and sneering looks. Ryan's hand gripped the steering wheel just tight enough, not because he was losing control, but because he was holding back something burning hot in his chest, the feeling of being pushed out of his own life. No one in the restaurant understood why he left. They thought it was the pride of a man being dominated by his wife. They would retell it as a funny little story at future parties. They would say Ryan was weak, sensitive, powerless. But if anyone could have seen inside that car, they would have understood something terrifying. Ryan was not broken at all. He had simply woken up. He drove straight to Lake Travis. The lakeside house was dark, spotless, so silent that even the sound of the key in the lock rang like a hammer striking stone. When Ryan stepped inside, the smell of wood and cold lake air rushed out and made him shiver. This was the house Vanessa always bragged about as her trophy, but in truth it carried his fingerprints. A quiet deal from years ago, an investment Vanessa never understood, never cared about, and never believed her silent husband could pull off. Ryan switched on the living room light. Pale yellow glow fell across the leather chairs, the fireplace, and the painting Vanessa once called a symbol of class. He stood there for a long time, as if seeing a familiar place for the first time and realizing it had become chuzzed to him. Meanwhile, at Nick and Sam's, Vanessa was performing the final act of a perfect party. She smiled, shook hands, accepted congratulations, as if Ryan disappearing was just a minor detail. But as the night went on, that smile stiffened. She checked her phone again and again, forcing calm. Sophie was different. She did not even ask where her father went. She posted stories about the party, the champagne, her mother's dress. In Sophie's world, her father was only a familiar shadow, always there when needed, and his disappearance did not leave any emptiness. Then Vanessa called. No answer. She texted. No reply. For the first time in years, Vanessa felt something cold slide down her spine. Not because she feared losing Ryan, but because she feared losing control of the story. When she got home, Vanessa walked into the living room, kicked off her shoes, tossed her handbag onto the couch. Her makeup was still flawless, but her eyes had darkened with irritation. She called again, and this time the phone went straight to voicemail. Vanessa froze for a few seconds, then clenched her jaw and turned to Sophie. "Where is your father?" Sophie shrugged, eyes never leaving her screen. "I do not know. Maybe he is mad." Mad. That single word made Vanessa let out a dry, harsh laugh, like someone who could not believe what she was hearing, because in Vanessa's mind Ryan did not have the right to be mad. He was the one behind, the one who stayed quiet, the one who always yielded. But out at Lake Travis, Ryan sat alone on the porch. Cold wind lashed his face. The lake was black as ink. In the sky, Dallas in the distance was only a blurred smear of light. He poured a glass of liquor and did not rush to drink. In his mind, the laughter in the restaurant echoed again and again, the contempt in their eyes. Vanessa's words like small knives he had endured for years. Ryan closed his eyes, and for the first time he admitted a brutal truth to himself. He had been silent for so long they thought he had no teeth. He opened his eyes and stared at the lake. In that darkness, a plan began to form. Not loud, not impulsive, just precise. And once Ryan Caldwell decided to step out of the supporting role, everyone who had laughed over his head would have to relearn an old lesson of life. Do not mistake silence for weakness. The next morning, Vanessa woke up with a strange feeling, not missing her husband, but a vague fear that the thing she'd controlled for 20 years had just slipped out of her grasp. The Highland Park house was as quiet as always. Sunlight filtered through the curtains and touched the glossy hardwood floor. But Vanessa felt everything was out of rhythm. She went downstairs to the kitchen, opened the fridge, then stood still. There was no hot coffee waiting, no breakfast, no sound of Ryan in the living room watching the news like his old routine. She called again. Still unreachable. Vanessa swallowed hard, annoyed, like someone had snapped her schedule in half. In her mind, she built one theory after another. Ryan was sulking. Ryan was playing a game. Ryan wanted her to apologize. She even thought if she used the right tone, Ryan would come back like always. But the truth was, Ryan was not waiting for an apology at all. At Lake Travis, Ryan stood before the wide glass door looking out at the lake. Thin fog covered the water like a funeral veil. He had slept little, but he had never been this clear. He thought about the party, the laughter, the way Vanessa raised her glass like a victor, and the way Sophie laughed along like her father was a joke. A dull pain rose up, but it no longer made him weak. It was like a hot piece of metal, forging his identity back into shape. He remembered the early years of the marriage, when Vanessa was young, her eyes still burning, not yet poisoned, when she used to rest her head on his shoulder and say she wanted them to stand on the peak together. Ryan had believed her. He had pushed his own career into the shadows so Vanessa could shine. He thought that was love. But love is not sacrificing until you are treated with contempt. Ryan opened his laptop and logged into the Caldwell family asset management system. Numbers ran across the screen like the heartbeat of a sleeping monster. The Caldwell Trust, the real estate portfolio, strategic investments, all of it under his signature authority. and among it was one line Vanessa had never truly known, a quiet capital contribution to the expansion project of the law firm where she had just made partner. Not directly under Ryan's name. No one in Vanessa's world could see it. But if Ryan pulled it out, the plan to open the new office would lose oxygen immediately. He did not smile. He did not rage. He simply typed a short email to his assistant in Austin, Elena, schedule meetings with the lawyer, the accountant, and the bank today. He hit send. That was enough. In Dallas, Vanessa began to lose patience. She called Sophie to ask where Ryan was. Sophie stayed indifferent and only said maybe Dad was mad. Vanessa laughed with disdain, but the laughter died quickly, because in that instant she realized what made her blood run cold. Ryan had never been mad, he had only been silent, and a man silent for too long, once he stands up, will not come back because of pleading. Ryan closed the laptop and stepped onto the porch. The wind was cold, but inside he was calm. He looked at the black water and told himself one sentence like a vow. They were used to seeing him as the one behind. So, from today on, he would be the one who decided who was allowed to stand in front. By noon, Vanessa began to panic. Not the panic of a wife losing her husband, but the panic of someone who suddenly realized the floor beneath her could collapse at any moment. She called again. The phone rang and rang. No answer. Vanessa gripped the phone, her expensive polished nails scraping the glass. She looked around the bright kitchen where Ryan had always quietly kept everything in order. Suddenly, the luxurious house felt empty, like a stage that had lost the person pulling the curtain. Sophie came downstairs in pajamas, eyes still glued to her phone. "Mom, I am hungry." Vanessa whipped around, voice sharp as a knife. "Where's your father?" Sophie shrugged, not seeing the seriousness. "I do not know. Maybe he is mad. Dad is always like that." Vanessa froze for a beat. That sentence hit her like a slap because she was the one who had taught Sophie to think that way. Ryan gets mad, ignore him. Ryan stays quiet, let him be. Ryan always comes back. But Vanessa did not know there was a line that once crossed, that man would not come back, he would flip the table. While Vanessa was still standing there, her phone buzzed. A message from the law firm partner group. Emergency meeting at 1 p.m. Attendance mandatory. Vanessa frowned. Emergency meeting. For what? She called her assistant, but her assistant only answered tensely that the instruction came from the executive committee, no details. Vanessa felt her spine go cold. She dressed quickly, rushed her makeup, but still tried to look perfect. Before leaving, she turned to Sophie. "Stay home. If your father comes back, tell him to call me." Sophie mumbled without looking up. Vanessa drove to the firm with anger simmering under her skin. As she drove, she replayed the party, remembered Ryan's eyes. Not angry, not hurt, just cold, a cold that made people shiver. When Vanessa entered the main conference room, nearly the entire executive committee was already there. Faces that usually wore polite smiles were tight like drawn wire. The finance manager sat against the wall holding a thick folder. The head of HR sat silent, like waiting for an execution. Vanessa stopped. Her heart started pounding. The senior partner at the head of the table looked at her with no more courtesy. "Vanessa, we just received notice. A major investor is withdrawing from the expansion plan." Vanessa narrowed her eyes. "Which investor?" He pushed the folder toward her. One name on the document was enough to steal the breath from her lungs, Caldwell Holdings. Vanessa felt the blood drain from her face. Impossible. She had never signed that deal. She only remembered mentioning once that the firm needed funding and that it would help her be seen in a better light. Ryan had only nodded and said he would consider it. Then she forgot, because she believed her husband was just safe and ordinary, incapable of anything big. But the paperwork was real, and at the bottom was the signature, Ryan Caldwell. Another partner snapped, "We are facing a serious shortfall. If we do not fix this now, the Los Angeles plan freezes. The bank is already asking about liquidity." Vanessa tried to stay composed, but her hands were shaking. "I will talk to my husband." Someone let out a dry laugh. "Your husband?" "Vanessa, you do not seem to understand. That investor is not an accessory, he is the foundation." That line stabbed straight through her pride. Before she could strike back, another sentence came, colder than ice. "And there is more. The executive committee is ordering an internal review for conflicts of interest in the partner promotion process. We have information involving you and Evan Klein." Vanessa locked up. Evan's name hit the room like a gunshot. She could not understand how they knew. She only knew that in that moment, everything started collapsing. She stood there for the first time feeling small, not in front of colleagues, but in front of the man she had called the one behind. At Lake Travis, Ryan was sitting in his private office in Austin, signing the last few documents. Elena placed a hot coffee in front of him. She watched him with respect and curiosity, but she did not ask. Ryan signed the final line, then paused, as if he heard something far away, not a sound, but the rumble of an empire shaking. He set the pen down, looked out the window, calm and deep. There was no cruel joy in him, only a cold fairness, because when someone has been turned into a joke for too long, the day he stands up is not about revenge, it is about reclaiming the truth. Vanessa left the meeting feeling as if the ground had been yanked from under her. She kept walking straight, spine still rigid by habit, but inside everything was falling. She passed the glass hallway where partner portraits hung like medals. Last night she had stood in applause, raising her glass, speaking of success. Now, in one afternoon, success had become a trap tightening around her throat. Her phone buzzed nonstop, messages from finance, from her assistant, and then a call that made her heart drop. Evan Klein. Seeing his name was like watching fire touch dry straw. Vanessa did not answer, not because she feared Evan, but because she suddenly understood this was beyond her control. Someone was pulling strings behind the scenes with terrifying precision. She got into her car, locked the doors, breathed hard, then called Ryan. For the first time in years, she spoke to her husband in her real voice, not a command. "Ryan, I need to talk." No answer. Vanessa clenched her phone until her hand went numb, then called again. Still nothing but hollow ringing. She looked at the clock, then at the parking lot. Her mind raced like tires sliding on ice. Where was Ryan? How had he done this and why? She started the engine and drove home. She needed something familiar to hold on to. At least Sophie was there, at least the house was still there. But when Vanessa pushed the door open, the house no longer felt like hers. It was empty, cold, as if all warmth had been drained out. Sophie was sprawled on the couch, earbuds in, eyes still on her phone. "Mom, you are back," Vanessa snapped. "Did your father call?" Sophie shrugged. "No, I told you. Dad is mad, just ignore him." Vanessa choked. That sentence punched straight into her pride, but not because Sophie was rude, because Sophie was repeating what Vanessa had taught her. Ryan gets mad, ignore him. Ryan gets quiet, ignore him. Ryan always comes back. Vanessa began to pace, searching the house like hunting for a clue. She opened the shared office. Everything looked the same, but something was wrong. Ryan's drawer was empty. The folders he used to keep neatly stacked were gone. His old laptop was gone too. Vanessa froze, and cold ran down her spine. He had prepared this. This was not an impulsive decision after the party, not the tantrum of a man insulted. This was a plan. She returned to the living room, her voice lower, rougher. "Sophie, do you know where your father is?" Sophie frowned like she was being bothered. "I do not know. Dad goes somewhere, Lake Travis or something." Lake Travis. Those two words made Vanessa's fist tighten. She stared out the window at the manicured lawn under bright Dallas sun. In that instant, she felt like a bird trapped in a golden cage. Beautiful outside, still a cage. She rushed upstairs, changed, grabbed her bag, and caught her reflection in the big hallway mirror. The mirror showed a perfect Vanessa, but her eyes had lost their usual confidence. For the first time, she saw herself as a woman about to lose everything. On the drive to Lake Travis, her phone buzzed again. A message from the firm. The executive committee requests that you avoid media appearances. The ethics review is officially opened. Vanessa swallowed, her throat raw like sandpaper. She looked at the highway, the cars rushing past, and for the first time in her life she felt fear. Not fear of losing face, but fear of losing the foundation, because now she understood. The man she called the one behind had been holding up this entire roof for 20 years, and if he pulled his hands away, she would fall straight down with nothing to save her. Across the city, Evan kept calling and texting, his tone surely panicking, but Vanessa no longer had the mind for Evan. She had only one goal. She had to see Ryan Caldwell before he turned her life to ash. Vanessa reached Lake Travis as the sky tilted toward evening, the wind sharp like thin knives. The first thing she saw was not Ryan, but the old sedan parked neatly by the porch. A brutal reminder that she had been wrong about this man for 20 years. She stepped out, slammed the door hard enough to rattle glass. Her heels struck the stone path fast and furious, like her heartbeat losing control. She marched to the door, rang the bell, then pounded her hand against the wood. Ryan, open the door right now. No answer, only the lake water lapping the shore, steady and cold like a witness who had seen it all. Vanessa clenched her teeth, walked away a few steps, then spun back, her voice louder. "What game is this? The firm called me. They opened an ethics review. The money is gone. Have you lost your mind?" The door stayed silent. Vanessa felt anger and fear rise together, choking her. She pulled out her phone and called again, trying to force him to appear. Then the door opened, not flung wide in rage, but slowly, calmly, as if the man inside had heard everything and had purposely left her outside a few extra seconds so she could taste being ignored. Ryan stood there. No suit, no show, just a gray shirt with sleeves rolled up, eyes deep and steady. In that calm was something terrifying, like the surface of the lake before a storm. Still above, drowning force below. Vanessa rushed in. "You pulled the money from the firm without warning. Do you know I just made partner? You destroyed my career over a sulk." Ryan did not step back. He did not flare. He looked at her like a stranger revealing her true self. "Sulk," Ryan repeated slowly as if tasting the word. "You think I walked out of that party because I was sulking?" Vanessa hesitated, then tried to hold her ground. "You were insulted. I was joking. Everyone knew it was just fun." Ryan tilted his head, a faint smile flickering. Not warm, not soft, more like a cut. "Fun. Then why did you not joke about Evan Klein in front of them? Fun. Why did you not raise your glass and say you were building your career by—" Vanessa froze. Her face drained, eyes wide, lips trembling, like someone stripped bare in a public square. "What are you saying?" Ryan stepped aside to let her in. His voice low, heavy. "Come in. Do not stand out there like you are the victim." Vanessa walked into the living room. The lakeside house was still luxurious, but today it felt like a courtroom. She turned back, her voice smaller but still defensive. "Were you spying on me?" Ryan closed the door, the latch clicking dry and final. He met her eyes. "I did not spy. I just opened my eyes." Panic took over her. Ryan did not need to prove anything. He only had to speak the truth, and the truth was enough to kill every layer of her makeup. He stepped closer, his voice slow like the final hammer. "You thought I was the background, the wallet, the safe man you could step on to climb." He stopped, eyes dark as the lake behind him. "But you forgot one thing. The foundation you mocked as low is the very thing holding you up, and if I pull it out, you fall straight to the bottom." In that moment, Vanessa understood the most terrifying truth. The man she despised was the one holding life and death power over her world. Before she could even turn away, her phone buzzed again. Not like a normal call, but like a fire alarm in a collapsing building. Ryan saw her eyes change as the caller name appeared. The executive committee. Vanessa snatched the phone like a drowning woman grabbing a float. She answered, forcing composure though her voice was shaking. "Yes, I am here." The voice on the other end was metal cold, no greeting, no softness, only short, sharp lines. "Vanessa, the board has decided. Your partner promotion is suspended. The ethics review is officially opened. You must appear tomorrow morning to explain yourself." Vanessa stood still, her whole body turning to ice. She glanced at Ryan, hoping he would stop it, tell her it was a misunderstanding, say he would fix it. Ryan did not move. He stood with hands in his pockets, eyes steady, the calm of a man who had decided. And when a man like that decides, nothing pulls him back. Vanessa took a breath. "But I just made partner. We announced it. This will humiliate me. I need an explanation." The voice paused, then answered plainly. "You will receive the full report. And Vanessa, you should be careful. There's more under review than you think." The call ended. Vanessa lowered the phone, her hand white from gripping it. For the first time in her life, she had nothing to say. No speech, no legal maneuver, no words to control the situation. Only the naked truth slapping her face. Ryan stepped closer, still calm, still cutting. "You heard it." Vanessa looked up, eyes wet, still trying to stand tall. "What did you do?" Ryan let out a small laugh, not joy, but bitter recognition. "I did not do anything. I just stopped being your foundation." Vanessa shook with anger. "You pulled the money. You talked to them. You fed them stories about me and Evan. You ruined me." Ryan stared straight at her, each word slicing through her pride. "You ruined yourself a long time ago, Vanessa. I only stopped covering for you." Silence fell over the living room. Wind hissed through the cracks like the house itself was sighing. Vanessa lunged again. "You are doing this over one sentence at a party, I was joking. You are a man. You should be strong. You should understand a joke." Ryan tipped his head, eyes slow and unforgiving, watching her dig her own grave. "A joke? I will ask you one thing. If it was a joke, why did you not joke in front of the person most important to you?" Vanessa could not speak. Ryan continued, voice low but heavy as stone. "Why did you choose to joke on my honor, in front of our daughter, in front of your colleagues, in front of people you wanted to impress?" Vanessa opened her mouth, but no sound came. She knew the answer, and that knowledge hurt more than anything. Ryan walked to the small table, picked up a stack of papers he had prepared, not legal filings, just copies of transactions, trust statements, Duke tuition payments, the Lake Travis purchase contract, and a single short note. "Everything you are losing. You thought you created it." He placed the papers in front of her. "Look." Vanessa looked down. Her eyes raced over the numbers and lines, and each line was a hammer to the skull. Sophie's tuition, the apartment rent, the unlimited credit card, the lake house she bragged about. The funding that fed the firm expansion. All of it led to one name, Ryan Caldwell. Vanessa looked up, lips shaking. "You hid this from me." Ryan's eyes darkened. In them was hurt, exhaustion, and the bitter edge of a man who once loved too honestly. "I did not hide it. I just did not brag. I thought that was decency. I thought love should not be HSBT. But my decency became your excuse to despise me." Vanessa broke down crying, but the tears were no longer a weapon. They fell like water from a cracked glass. "I did not mean to." Ryan looked at her, not soft yet, not fully cold. "Maybe you did not mean to, Vanessa, but you made it a habit." He stepped closer and spoke like a verdict. "From now on, you will live in the truth. No more stories you invented, no more borrowed spotlight." Vanessa stared at him, confused, like a child staring at a storm. "What do you want?" Ryan turned his head to the lake. I want to be respected again, even if I have to lose my whole family to get it. Outside, the wind kept blowing. The lake stayed cold, but inside the room, Vanessa finally understood. The most frightening thing is not an angry man. It is a man who has been silent long enough and now chooses to stand tall. The next morning, as Vanessa walked into the ethics review meeting, Sophie at Duke began to fall out of the sky, and she fell so hard she could not even understand why. It started with a small beep from the card reader at her usual campus cafe. Sophie stood at the counter with a latte in hand, hair loosely tied, eyes still scrolling her phone like any other day. She swiped her card. Error. She frowned and swiped again. Error. The cashier looked at her with pity. Sorry, your card was declined. Sophie froze. Her face flushed like she had been slapped in front of a crowd. Behind her, friends began whispering, someone murmuring that the Caldwell family must be in trouble. Sophie forced a weak smile, pulled out another card. Declined again. Her heart pounded, and for the first time she felt fear over something she had never had to think about. Money. She set the latte down, stepped out of line, and called her mother. Mom, my card is not working. I cannot buy anything. In Dallas, Vanessa was sitting before the disciplinary committee. She felt her phone vibrating and ignored it, trying to keep her posture cold. But the committee was not cold to her. They asked directly about her relationship with Evan Klein, about dinners after hours, about conflicts of interest. Vanessa answered like a lawyer, sharp and technical, but her voice was no longer steady like yesterday, because for the first time she understood someone was standing outside that room with a hand on the light switch, and if he turned it off, it would go dark. At Duke, Sophie could not wait. She called again. No answer. She started texting. Mom, answer me. I am so embarrassed. No reply. Then she called her father, even though in her mind her father had always been the less important one in problems like this. Dad, what did you do to my card? The call rang, and surprisingly, someone answered. Ryan's voice was calm as the lake. Hi, sweetheart. Those two words alone made Sophie go still, because her father had never answered this quickly, never with a calm so complete as if he had been waiting for this call. Sophie swallowed. Dad, my card got declined. I cannot buy anything. My friends are staring at me. Ryan paused a beat. In that pause, Sophie felt something heavy drop. A wall she had leaned on her whole life had turned into a door that just closed. I changed your card. Sophie's eyes widened. Why? Because I cannot keep funding a life where you act like you will never face consequences. Sophie choked. She wanted to react the way her mother had taught her, to get angry, to call him petty, but Ryan's voice stayed even, and that evenness made her tremble. But I am studying. I need money. I need to get around. This weekend my friends are going to New York. Ryan cut her off. Gentle but final. If you need New York, you can earn it. Sophie went numb. In her head, humiliation exploded. The humiliation she'd only seen in others, students working part-time, people counting every dollar. She had looked at them like a different class, not her world. Now she stood on the edge of that same world. Are you punishing me? Ryan exhaled, not the sigh of a weak man, but the breath of someone who had endured enough. No, Sophie, I am teaching you. She had no words. Ryan continued, slower, so she would hear every word like a required lesson. Do you know where your Duke tuition comes from? Sophie snapped back by reflex. Mom said she had connections. She said she handled it. On the other end, Ryan was silent longer. And in that silence, Sophie began to feel fear. That money is from the Caldwell Trust. From me. Not from networking. Not from the story your mother told. Sophie felt slapped again, but this time it was a slap to her understanding. Ryan did not raise his voice. He only told the truth, and the truth was more dangerous than any scolding. You can keep believing your mother, but from today, your life will reflect who is paying. Sophie's voice broke. "Dad, you are making me lose face." Ryan answered, still calm. "Losing face will not kill you. It only kills the illusion." Sophie collapsed onto a stone bench near the library. Students passed by, laughing, the campus alive, but she felt herself falling into a cold emptiness. For the first time, she realized her father was not just a gentleman at home. Her father was the one holding up the entire world she had been standing on. And if he stopped holding it, she would have to stand on her own. 3 days later, Vanessa was no longer the Vanessa Dallas had respected. She became a name whispered behind backs, a figure removed from important calls, a woman staring into a mirror and not recognizing herself. That morning, she walked out of the ethics review with a strained smile like a mask. She still wore expensive clothes, her hair still perfectly styled, but her eyes no longer carried the sharpness that once made whole rooms shift aside. In the elevator, she saw her reflection, a woman trying to balance on a bridge already cracked. Rumors spread faster than any official memo. Calls that used to sound warm disappeared. Gala invitations disappeared. The people who had raised glasses to her the night before now sent short messages like they feared contamination. In the Highland Park Club Group chat, her name was removed from the attendee list for a major charity event. No one said it outright. They simply said the list was full. But Vanessa understood. High society does not exile you with words. They just go quiet, and that silence is enough to suffocate you. She got home late that night, her heels striking the floor like a hammer. Sophie called from Duke, crying over the declined card. Vanessa listened, her chest tightening, but before she could comfort her, another wave of shame rose, because her daughter was tasting what Ryan had tasted for 20 years, being looked down on, being ignored, being taught a lesson with silence. Vanessa went upstairs and opened her closet. Designer dresses hung in perfect rows, glittering under the light. Everything was still there, but it no longer felt like it belonged to her. It looked like an exhibit of a life that had just died. Vanessa sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, scanning her contacts. Evan kept texting, frantic lines, broken questions. But Vanessa had no mind for Evan anymore. She began to understand something horrifying. Evan was only a road. Ryan was the ground. She called Ryan again, this time not shouting, not commanding, only a low, rough voice like someone who had not slept in days. "Ryan, I need to talk. Not about the firm, about us." At Lake Travis, Ryan sat on the porch staring at the dark water under the sunset. He answered, but did not speak right away. He let Vanessa hear the wind, so she could taste being left outside the door, being treated as unimportant. Vanessa swallowed. "What do you want?" Ryan answered slowly, each word dropping like stone into water. "I want you to understand. This collapse is not something I caused. It is consequence." Vanessa closed her eyes. The party returned in her mind, the champagne, the laughter. Ryan's face as he stood and walked away, not hurt, not angry, only decided. She had thought he was weak, now she knew she was wrong. Ryan continued, his voice not loud but chilling. "You lived on a story you told yourself, but from now on you will live on truth. And the truth is, you cannot step on someone's back and still expect them to crouch down and hold you up forever." Vanessa opened her eyes. Tears ran, no longer from anger, but from fear, regret, and the first real realization that her life would be empty if the foundation she despised was gone. At Duke, Sophie sat alone in her dorm room, watching friends prepare for a weekend trip. She could not go. She could not talk. She only felt a cold hole in her chest. Mother and daughter, in different places, were learning the same lesson. Not everyone who is silent is weak. Some people are silent because they have not decided to strike yet. 7 days after the party, Vanessa had to sell the Tesla she had just bought. And the moment she signed the papers, she understood she was not selling a car. She was selling the illusion that she was untouchable. Dallas, that day was gray, a thin drizzle falling like the city was whispering. Vanessa sat in the dealership office, pen in hand, trembling. The staff still smiled politely, still spoke in the usual professional tone, but Vanessa heard distance in it. They knew. Everyone knew. The woman who had been called partner last week was now a problem to avoid. When the Tesla rolled off the lot, Vanessa watched it go, her throat tightening. She wanted to turn away, to tell herself it was temporary, but the truth was ice cold. She needed cash, not because Ryan had fully cut her off, but because the firm had frozen bonuses, delayed partner benefits, and, most importantly, relationships were pulling away like hands pulled from fire. Vanessa returned to the Highland Park house in silence. The house that had been her stage now looked like a theater after closing. Lights out, seats empty, everything beautiful but lifeless. In the living room, Sophie called from Duke, voice raw. "Mom, I cannot take it. Friends are going out, I cannot. People look at me like I am broke." Vanessa opened her mouth, but there were no words that fit. She had taught Sophie that status must be protected at any cost, that being looked down on was death. Now, Sophie was dying from that exact lesson. Vanessa ended the call and sank onto the couch, face in her hands. For the first time in years, she could not perform. At Lake Travis, Ryan received a thick envelope from Graham Whitaker, the attorney managing the Caldwell Trust. Inside were final updates. Sophie's card limit had been adjusted. Duke tuition would be paid directly to the school, leaving no room for anyone to use it as a bragging story. And most importantly, Vanessa's access to a portion of shared funds was frozen until a new agreement was reached. Ryan read slowly, unblinking. Not because he was happy, but because he was watching a life he once built with patience now being rebuilt with boundaries. Graham called. "Ryan, I need final confirmation. Once you sign, it will be difficult to reverse." Ryan looked at the lake. The water was still like black glass. He thought of the party, Sophie laughing, Vanessa's contempt, the feeling of being turned into a joke in front of 40 people. He answered, "Sign it." Graham paused, then said, "Understood. I will execute." Ryan ended the call. He did not feel revenge. He felt the closing of a wound that kindness had let rot. In Dallas, Vanessa read a message from the firm. "Please return your building access badge until further notice." Vanessa gripped the phone until her fingers went white. She wanted to scream, but she could not, because for the first time she understood. Reputation is not built by words. It can be destroyed by a single truth, and that truth was in Ryan Caldwell's hands. Rumors exploded like fire and wind, and in one night Vanessa realized the cruelest thing in Dallas was not the law. It was high society. They did not need proof to convict you. They only needed a reason to turn their backs. That night, Vanessa stood before the bedroom mirror, trying to reapply lipstick as if red could save a life cracking apart. She still dressed well, still tried to hold the posture of a powerful woman, but her hand trembled, just enough for her to notice. Her phone buzzed, a charity gala invitation that used to be her ticket to prove status. Vanessa opened it and felt her heart stab when she saw the short line, "We are sorry. The list has changed. Thank you for understanding." No sender name, no explanation. A polite slap, then a message in the Highland Park Club Friend group. "Things are too noisy right now. We are postponing seeing each other for a while. Let everything calm down." Vanessa read it and laughed dryly. The laugh of someone who once stood above, now watching herself fall with no hand reaching out. She called her closest friend from that group, the woman who had hugged her at the party. The phone rang, no answer. She called again, still nothing. She understood. Those people did not need her anymore. When she was partner, she was a bridge. When she became risk, she became a stain to wipe away. In the wide Highland Park house, the warm lights fell over the living room like stage lights. But Vanessa felt herself standing alone on an empty stage after the audience had left. She remembered the party, the smiles when she mentioned the old sedan, Sophie giggling like she was watching a show. Vanessa had thought it was her victory moment. She did not know it was the moment she signed her own death certificate. Her phone buzzed again. An unknown number. Vanessa answered with automatic professionalism. "Hello." A middle-aged woman's voice came through, gentle but cold. "Vanessa, this is Meredith Lang, the partner Lang's wife." Vanessa straightened. This was a family she had always worked to stay close to. "I am listening, Meredith." The voice paused, then spoke slowly. "I wanted you to know our charity fund will be changing its coordinator, and we will be sending future invitations directly to Ryan." Vanessa felt like her throat was being squeezed. Ryan. Yes, Ryan Caldwell. We have always valued him. In fact, we invited him out of respect for him. You were only the plus one. Meredith said it as lightly as if talking about weather, but Vanessa felt the air ripped from her lungs. She forced, "I understand." Meredith added one last sentence like a nail sealing a coffin. "Vanessa, honest advice, if you want to save anything, stop fighting Ryan. You cannot win." The call ended. Vanessa stood still, staring into nothing. Meredith was right. Ryan did not fight with words. He fought with foundations, and he had power Meredith had seen for years, while Vanessa had been blind. At Lake Travis, Ryan received an email from the biggest Dallas charity organizers. "We would like to partner with you directly as our principal sponsor." Ryan read it and felt no triumph, only bitter irony. His whole life beside Vanessa, he had never needed recognition. Yet the moment he stepped away from her, the world suddenly saw him clearly. Vanessa, that night, sat down on the living room floor, barefoot. No jacket, no image left. She cried, but there was no one left to witness. Her stage had gone dark. 10 days after the party at Nick and Sam's, Evan Klein was terminated. And in that exact moment, he called Ryan Caldwell like a wounded animal looking for someone to bite. The phone rang while Ryan sat in his Austin office watching numbers move across a screen like the bloodstream of an entire system. Elena had just walked in with coffee, barely setting it down when Ryan saw the caller name. Evan Klein. Ryan answered calmly. "Hello?" Evan exploded without greeting, without restraint. "Mitchell, no, Caldwell. Who do you think you are to do this? You destroyed my career. You made the board turn on me. You dragged me into the mud because your wife preferred me over you. A man like you is pathetic." Ryan was silent for a beat, not because it hurt, but because he was observing. A different kind of man, the kind who leaned on family power and thought everything was a toy. Ryan replied slowly, "Interesting. So, are you calling to cry or to confess?" Evan faltered, then hardened. "Do not play with words. I know you fed them information. You pulled money, you used connections to bury me." Ryan leaned back, eyes cold but not blazing. Fire was for weak men who needed noise. Ryan did not need noise. "Listen carefully, Evan. I did not destroy you, I only pulled the curtain down." Evan snarled. "Who is going to believe you? A husband abandoned, mocked, stepped on by his wife. You think you are noble. You are just a man scared his wife is stronger than him." Ryan gave a small, sharp laugh. "If I were scared, I would have stayed at that restaurant last night and begged her to stop laughing. But I walked out. And you are calling me from the bottom." Silence. Then Ryan heard Evan's breathing like someone trying to keep balance on a cliff edge. Evan threatened, "This is not over. I have connections. I will drag you down with me." Ryan did not change his tone. "I have connections too. The difference is, I do not use them to touch women and hide behind my father's name." Evan went quiet, then threw his last stone. "Vanessa will come back to me. You are just the background." Ryan paused, and in that pause, one thing became clear. If it had been harmless, Evan would not be this bitter. If he were clean, he would not be calling like a man who lost prey. Ryan spoke softly. "If she goes back to you, That is a fitting prize for what you are. I do not compete for trash. The words landed like cold steel. Evan went silent. Only breathing remained. Ryan closed the door with the same calm. Good luck finding a job. The market does not like people fired for scandals. He ended the call. Elena stood still, looking at Ryan like a man who had walked through a storm without getting wet. Ryan set the phone down and looked out the window. Austin's sunlight poured in, strangely clear. He felt no gloating, only a deep relief. He once thought he had to fight to win back a wife. Now he understood he did not need to win back anyone. He only needed to win back himself. 2 weeks later, Sophie dropped out, and as she dragged her suitcase out of her Duke dorm, she understood a truth that squeezed her breath out. What she had called her future was actually just an expensive ticket she had never paid for. The sky in North Carolina was heavy and gray. The rain was not hard, but it would not stop, like a sadness that would not end. Sophie walked down the dorm hallway pulling the large suitcase, the wheels squealing across the tile. Her roommate leaned on the doorframe watching her with a mix of curiosity and pity. "You are really leaving." Sophie nodded, forcing her voice to stay flat. "Yeah, I guess I am not meant for this place." But she knew she was lying. It was not that she did not fit. She could not stand it. She could not stand applying for aid. She could not stand the looks when the finance office called her a scholarship case. She could not stand that every weekend her friends wanted New York and she had to refuse like someone poor. And the most humiliating part was that she used to think those people were beneath her. Sophie got into the car back to Dallas. The whole way, she did not play music. She stared out the window watching rows of trees pass like years she had wasted in arrogance. When she arrived in Highland Park, the house was still beautiful, but it was no longer loud. Vanessa had moved into a hotel long ago. There was no expensive perfume in the air, no rapid click of heels, only emptiness, like a house drained of its soul. Sophie stepped into the living room and saw her father. Ryan sat there with no suit, only a simple shirt. A few folders and a laptop were on the table. He looked up at her, not angry, not blaming, only calm in a way that made Sophie feel small. "Dad." Her voice was rough. She had prepared a speech, prepared to blame others, prepared to cry and ask for money. But when she looked at her father, it all dissolved, because for the first time she saw something in his eyes she had never wanted to see. Exhaustion. Ryan set the laptop down, voice low. "You dropped out of Duke." Sophie lowered her head, tears rising, but she swallowed them. "I could not take it. I did not know it would turn into this." Ryan was silent for a long moment, and in that moment Sophie felt like she was standing before a court. But this court did not judge with words. It judged with truth. "Where do you think the money came from for you to live like a princess for 19 years? Sophie trembled. "Mom said." Ryan cut her off. Gentle but final. "Your mother tells the story. I pay the bills." That line hit Sophie in the chest. She broke down crying. But this time not because the money was cut, she cried from shame, because she had laughed at the man supporting her as if he did not matter. "Dad, I am sorry." Ryan looked at her, and in his eyes there was a pain so deep only fathers understand, the pain of being looked down on by the child he loved most. "Sorry for what, Sophie?" Sophie choked. "For laughing. For not standing with you." Ryan nodded slightly. Not forgiving yet, only acknowledging. "Good. At least you can see it now." Sophie sobbed. "I do not know what to do. I just want everything back the way it was." Ryan stood up slowly, and as he rose, Sophie instinctively stepped back, not because she feared him, but because for the first time she realized her father had weight, power, and limits. "It is not going back, Sophie." He looked straight at her. Voice firm but not harsh, the voice of a man teaching a final lesson. "You are almost 20. You will learn how to live again. I will not abandon you, but I will not fund your illusions anymore." Sophie lifted her red eyes. So, what do I do? Ryan walked to the window and looked out at the green lawn. Outside, Dallas was still bright, still rich, but the world inside this house had changed. You will transfer to the University of Texas at Austin. You will live in a small apartment I rent. You will work part-time. You will learn to manage money. And most of all, you will learn to respect the person who sacrificed for you. Sophie went quiet. Part of her wanted to fight back, to scream that it was unfair, but she remembered the beep of the card reader at Duke, the looks from others, the feeling of falling out of the sky. She understood this was not punishment. This was rescue. Ryan turned back to her, his eyes softer now, carrying both love and resolve. I am not doing this to hurt you. I am doing this to make you strong. Sophie nodded, tears sliding down. For the first time, she did not see her father as a shadow. She saw him as a man she needed to become worthy of. 3 months later, Vanessa walked into a new office in Plano, carrying an ordinary handbag. No logo, no glossy leather, no halo. And the moment she saw the small sign that read Family Law Associates, she understood she had fallen from the sky she once believed was hers forever. It was not a glass tower like her old firm. Just a low building, narrow halls, the smell of old paper and cheap coffee. Vanessa stood outside for a few seconds, took a deep breath, then walked in like a soldier who had lost but still had to stand straight. The HR manager handed her a thin plastic access badge. Your desk is at the end of the hall, no personal assistant, no glass office. We are short-staffed on divorce filings and custody disputes. Vanessa nodded, lips pressed tight. She had argued mergers worth hundreds of millions. She had stood in court in expensive suits with razor-sharp arguments. Now, she would argue about child support and weekend pickup schedules. One step down into the pit, and she could not drag anyone with her. That noon, Vanessa sat alone in the break room with a cheap salad in front of her. No one invited her to lunch. No one asked about galas or big deals. Every conversation here was small, but it was real. So real, there was no room for Vanessa to perform. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. I heard you are looking for work. If you need, I can refer you to a council position in Houston. But you should understand, people are avoiding you. Vanessa stared at the words, eyes burning. She used to be hunted. Now she was a name avoided, like an oil stain. What? The ethics review at her old firm ended, and the conclusion was not enough for prosecution. But her reputation was dead. In places like Dallas, sometimes a whisper is enough to kill a life. That night, Vanessa drove back to the small apartment she rented. No more Highland Park House. No more Tesla. No more Armani dresses. The apartment was clean and tidy, but cold. Cold like a hotel room with no history. She stood before the mirror and pulled her hair back. Looking at her face, Vanessa realized the most painful thing was not wrinkles or dark circles. It was her gaze. Eyes once sharp as knives were now hollow, like a woman who had lost her stage. She thought of Ryan, thought of the party at Nick and Sam's. If someone could rewind that moment and tell Vanessa to stop, maybe everything would be different. But life has no if. Vanessa held her phone, her hand trembling. There was no one left to call. Her Highland Park friends had vanished. Evan Klein had lost his job and disappeared like he never existed. Her daughter Sophie was in Austin working part-time and no longer listening to the stories her mother spun. She had only one person left, Ryan Caldwell. Vanessa called. The phone rang. This time Ryan answered. Hello? His voice was still calm, not happy, not angry, and no longer warm. Vanessa choked. She used to be the one who spoke, led, dominated. Now she did not know how to begin. Ryan, it is Vanessa. I know, she swallowed, and finally said the thing her pride once would not allow. I lost everything. Ryan was silent. Vanessa heard his breathing, faint, carrying the past. She continued, voice breaking. "I'm not calling to ask for money. I just want to say I understand now. I understand why you did it. I understand how I turned you into the background." A long silence. Then Ryan answered slowly. "Good. What I need is not for you to come back rich. What I need is for you to learn respect." Vanessa closed her eyes, tears falling. "I am sorry, Ryan." Ryan did not say he forgave her. He only said one line that made Vanessa shake with pain. Sorry is the first step, not the end. The Friday that week, Ryan did not invite Vanessa back home. He invited her to Lake Travis, and that alone told Vanessa this was not a reunion. It was a trial without a judge, where truth was the only verdict. The afternoon faded fast. The lake reflected the last strip of sunlight like a thin golden scar stretching to the horizon. Ryan stood on the porch holding grill tongs, the smell of seared beef mixing with cold wind. No suit, no quiet, defeated posture. Now he carried the steadiness of a man standing in the right place. When Vanessa's car stopped, she stepped out slowly. No heels, no Armani, only a brown coat, dark pants, hair tied back. She stood by the path for a moment, like she feared stepping into a place that no longer belonged to her. Ryan did not rush out to greet her. He only watched. Vanessa climbed the steps and spoke softly. "Ryan," he nodded and motioned her inside. Sophie was there. She sat in the living room in a simple sweater with a glass of water in her hand. Her face no longer carried the old arrogance. When she saw her mother, she flinched. Not hatred, just shame. Shame to look at the woman who had painted a false life for her. Vanessa went still. She wanted to hug her daughter, to say 100 apologies. But any gesture now could look like acting, and for the first time in her life, Vanessa did not want to act. The three of them ate dinner on the porch. No music, no guests, no champagne, only wind, the crackle of charcoal, and the clear sound of forks touching plates. So clear, each person could hear their own heartbeat. Ryan cut the meat and served Sophie first, then Vanessa. It was courtesy, but it was also a boundary. He was not humiliating Vanessa. He simply was no longer lifting her up. Vanessa ate a few bites, then set her fork down, voice rough. "I started therapy." Sophie looked up. Ryan did not react, he only watched, waiting for her to continue. Vanessa took a deep breath. "I thought success was making others bow. I thought if I achieved enough, I would never fear being abandoned, never fear being looked down on. But I did the worst thing." She looked at Ryan, eyes red. "I despised the only person who never needed me to prove anything." Ryan set his glass down. A long silence. Sophie looked from her father to her mother like a child standing in the rubble of a family she once thought could not break. Ryan spoke slowly. "Are you sorry about the party or sorry because you lost everything?" Vanessa felt stabbed. She swallowed. "Both. But not the way you think. The party was when I tore off my own mask. Losing everything is when I realized that mask was killing me." Sophie spoke suddenly, quiet but real. "I am sorry too, Dad." Ryan turned to his daughter. His eyes softened a little but stayed firm. "Sorry because you laughed, or sorry because you lost your card?" Sophie flushed and lowered her head. "Sorry because I did not respect you. I thought you were just the man at home. I was wrong." Ryan nodded slightly, not forgiving yet, only acknowledging. Vanessa began to cry, not the cry of a woman being taken down, but the cry of a woman seeing herself in the mirror for the first time and being afraid to look too long. Ryan stood and walked to the porch rail. He stared at the water, then spoke without turning back. "I do not hate you, but I will not go back to being the background." Vanessa wiped her tears, voice trembling. "So, do we still have a chance?" Ryan turned back. His eyes were not cold, but sharp. A chance is not going back to how it was. A chance is learning how to live truthfully. And if you want to stay in my life, you have to accept one thing. Vanessa held her breath. Not on your terms anymore. Sophie looked at her mother. Vanessa looked at her daughter. Both understood. The man once called the one behind now stood between them like a real pillar. He did not need to step on anyone to stand. He only needed to stop bowing. Dinner ended in silence, but not war silence. The silence of truth finally spoken. And for the first time in that lakeside house, something new began. Not wealth, but respect. 1 month after that dinner, Vanessa stood in the rain outside the building where Ryan worked. And for the first time in her life, she did not come to win an argument. She came to ask for one small step into the life of the man she had turned into a shadow. Austin that day was heavy with rain, steady, cold, unending. Vanessa hurried through the lobby, coat speckled with water, hair tied back. She no longer looked like a glamorous partner, but her eyes carried something tougher, the stubborn resolve of someone life had taught painfully. She went to reception and spoke softly. "I want to see Ryan Caldwell. I have an appointment." She was not sure Ryan truly counted it as an appointment, but she had to try. Reception checked, nodded, and called. Minutes later, Elena appeared. She looked at Vanessa with a professional face. No scorn, no pity. "Follow me." The hallway was long, the lights white, the air smelled of paper and coffee. Vanessa followed, heart pounding. She remembered the last time she walked into a glamorous Dallas office, chin high, like the world belonged to her. Now she entered Ryan's world like a guest with no natural right. The door opened. Ryan stood by the window looking down at rain-soaked streets. He turned at her steps, sleeves rolled, posture steady. No welcoming softness, no hatred, only the calm of a man no longer moved by emotion. Vanessa stopped at the threshold. "Hi," Ryan nodded. "What is it?" Vanessa swallowed, set her bag on the chair like she wanted to prove she did not come to fight. "I want to return this." She pulled out a small card, her Highland Park Club membership card Ryan had renewed every year, and placed it on the desk like placing down a piece of the past. "I do not need it anymore." Ryan looked at it, a trace of irony in his eyes, but he did not speak. Vanessa continued, voice rough. "I sold the rest too, the things I bought so people would look at me. I realized the more of those I had, the emptier I was." Ryan stayed silent. He let her speak. He did not save her with words. He gave her space to stand on her own. Vanessa met his eyes, red but not crying. "I'm not here to ask to go back to how it was. I know that is impossible. I just want you to know I am learning to live truthfully." Ryan walked to the desk, touched the card and slid it back toward her. "Keep it, not because you deserve it, because it is a lesson." Vanessa stared. Ryan said, voice low, "You do not need to throw away everything you own to prove you changed. You need to change how you see people, especially the man who stood beside you." Vanessa breathed in like someone whose heart had been squeezed and released. "I understand." Ryan looked at her, a little softer, but still firm. "Then prove it with time, not tears." Vanessa nodded, walked to the door, then paused. "Ryan, thank you for not destroying me completely." Ryan answered very softly, "I did not destroy you. I only stopped shielding you." Vanessa stepped back into the hallway. The rain was still falling outside, but inside her, for the first time in a long time, something warmed. Not hope of being queen again, but hope of becoming a decent human being. One late spring afternoon, Ryan received an envelope with no sender, and one single sentence inside made the air in his office turn cold like glass meeting ice. Inside was a simple card, thick paper, no decoration, only one line, "I've not forgotten. This is not over." Ryan read it without frowning, without swearing. He folded it and set it on his desk like a piece of trash to be handled. Elena saw the smallest shift in his eyes, not fear, but alertness. Ryan called Graham Whitaker immediately. "Check for me. Who's trying to reach the fund partners? I want to know what is moving around Evan Klein." Graham answered shortly. "I'll have people run it now." Ryan stood and went to the window. Below was busy Austin, bright sun, a day too beautiful to think about dirty things. But Ryan understood. Men like Evan do not let go because of shame. They let go when they are crushed, or when they find a new target to bite. An hour later, Graham called back, his voice lower than normal. "Ryan, there is something." Evan is talking to a group of investors in Houston. He is building a story that harmed partners and investors. He is implying you made insider moves for personal profit. Ryan gave a small cold laugh. He is saving himself by dragging me down. Graham stayed silent. "I think he is about to file a civil suit. He might not win, but he wants noise. Enough noise to pull you into the press." Ryan's eyes darkened. "He wants me back as the background, the man others tell stories about." "No." Ryan returned to his desk and called someone he had not needed for years. Caleb Hart, an old college friend, now a crisis and legal fixer. Caleb answered, "Mitchell, it has been a while. I heard you shook all of Dallas." Ryan spoke bluntly. "I need you to shut up a dog biting behind my back." Caleb chuckled. "Name? Evan Klein." Caleb's voice turned serious immediately. "Oh, the system's son, dangerous type, but manageable. Do you want a quiet kill or a loud one?" Ryan looked out the window. No anger now, only principle. "Clean. Do not let him touch my family again." Caleb said, "Okay, but understand, when we crush this type, there will be blood. Not literal, reputational." Ryan answered short. "I lived 20 years being smeared in my own home. I am not afraid of a reputation threat anymore." That evening, Sophie called her father. "Dad, people on campus are talking about Mom. They say she has a scandal. Is Evan doing something again?" Ryan heard the maturity in his daughter's voice. She was no longer the girl who laughed at him. She was a young woman learning to protect family. Ryan answered gently, "Do not worry. I can handle it." Sophie choked. "I do not want you to be hurt again." Ryan paused, then spoke slowly, like speaking to himself. "I am not hurt by someone like Evan. I was only ever hurt when my own family could not see me." In Plano, Vanessa also heard it. A new colleague pulled her aside and whispered, "Vanessa, be careful. I heard Evan is mentioning you. He wants to drag you with him. He wants to say you are a victim being financially controlled by Ryan." Vanessa froze. Then something lit in her eyes. Not pride, clarity. She called Ryan. "I heard. Evan will not use me as a shield anymore. This time, let me stand up." Ryan did not answer immediately. He heard something real in her voice. Not a woman needing rescue, a woman taking responsibility. Ryan asked slowly, "Are you sure?" Vanessa answered firmly, "I am sure. I hurt you once. I will not let anyone else hurt you through me again." When Ryan ended the call, he sat still a long time, then opened his drawer, took out the threatening card, and tore it in half. In this war, Evan thought he was pulling Ryan down. He did not know. This time, Ryan was not alone. And when the people who once treated him like the background started standing with him, that was the biggest twist of all. 3 weeks after the threat card, Evan Klein vanished from every game. Not because Ryan fought loudly, but because Ryan did the most dangerous thing a silent man can do. He put truth into daylight, at the right time, in the right place, to the right people. That morning, Austin was crystal clear. Ryan stood in a small meeting room with Caleb Hart and Graham Whitaker. On the table sat a thick file, not an emotional story, evidence, emails, messages, transactions, and statements from 2 women Evan had harassed at his old firm, women who finally dared to speak because they knew someone real was backing them. Caleb looked at Ryan. "How do you want to end it?" Ryan answered short, quiet, but permanent. Caleb nodded. He knew men like Ryan. They did not like displaying victory. They liked closing doors. At the same time, in Houston, Evan was trying to pull in another investor group, spinning his victim story, painting Ryan as a man abusing financial power. But Evan did not know one person in that room had received Caleb's email an hour earlier. An email holding information no one wanted to touch. At noon, Evan received a call, not from Ryan, from a longtime partner. "Evan, we are stopping business with you, and you should disappear for a while." Evan screamed, "For what?" Because of a cheated husband. The voice on the other end was cold, "Because too many people say the same things about you, and we just received proof that if it explodes, you will have nowhere to stand." Evan ended the call, hands shaking. He called others. No one answered. The people who used to laugh with him now dropped him like something dirty. That same day, an anonymous post appeared in the Texas legal circle. No names, no Ryan, no Vanessa, only a description of a senior figure terminated for harassment and abuse of power. The frightening part was it was not loud, sensational, just accurate enough that insiders understood. And once they understood, Evan was finished. That night at Lake Travis, Ryan grilled again on the porch. Sophie arrived late, fresh from part-time work, coffee smell still on her hands. Vanessa came too, no longer carrying the posture of someone begging forgiveness, coming like a woman learning to stand in the right place. They did not call it family, but they sat together, and this time no one laughed above anyone's head. Sophie looked at her father and spoke softly. "Dad, I think I get it now. Real value is not in applause. It is in not losing yourself." Ryan nodded, his eyes softer. "Yes, and the most important thing is never use the people you love as steps to climb." Vanessa lowered her head, tears falling lightly, no drama, no acting, only real pain. Ryan looked at the lake. Wind moved gently. Water reflected distant city lights like thin lines. He thought of the birthday night, the laughter, the moment he stood and walked out. If he had not walked out that night, he would have kept dying slowly inside his own life. He turned to the two of them, voice low and sure. "I do not know what the future will be. But I know one thing. From now on, no one gets to define me." Sophie nodded. Vanessa nodded. In that silence, a new beginning formed, not richer, truer. If you want, I can also generate a shorter, more punchy voice over translation in the same meaning. But since you asked for no cutting and no adding, I kept every detail in full.